Hi, students. It is module 7 of the semester. Welcome. I hope you're doing well. The sun is shining today. It's beautiful. The birds are chirping. So hopefully you're getting some good vibes today. This week is awesome. We're going over adolescence. I love teenagers. I think they get a bad rap and they don't need to. Yes, there are some challenges that teenagers have that can be a little bit hard to work with sometimes, but I find for the most part, um, teenagers are awesome and amazing, and they're trying so hard, and they're learning so much, and they have so much development going on. I said that word, development going on. Um, and so let's talk just slightly about that development, and then I'll talk about your assignments. So when we're looking at um, development during the teenage years, we've got so many things interacting. They're going through puberty, and for girls, that starts really pretty early. It can start pretty early, anywhere from 8 to about 12, 13 years old. And then for boys, it's a little bit later. So think more in the um, 11 to 13 years old is when kind of puberty starts to onset for them. So, um, and when that happens, obviously there's a lot of physical changes going on. There's a lot of hormones, estrogen and testosterone, and that can have a huge effect on their mental health as well, right? So, not only are they make these like physical changes, they're having a lot of cognitive changes as well. They start having more abstract thinking. Okay, so what this means is they can start seeing hypothetical situations. This increases their interest in justice and fairness. Okay, which is a wonderful thing. We need that. But sometimes that gets viewed as, um, when a teenager is like, well, this isn't fair, or I demand justice for um, just, chores or whatever it is that they're thinking about. It's important for parents to keep in mind that that's normal. They're not trying to necessarily be bad or be rejecting of their parents, but it's just a normal phase that they're going through. And so a lot of patience is required for that stage. They're also forming their identity even more. So their gender, their sexuality, their sort of their culture, right? Think of like their peer groups, what they're interested in, as well as religion and politics. Um, and so they may have, this is a stage typically when they start to question what their parents have taught them, right? So, when it comes to um, say like religion, and a teenager is like, well, I don't know if that's what I believe, right? They want to discover those things. They want to figure those things out. So it's a completely normative experience for them to um, start to maybe oppose some of their parents' views or just be curious about other views, right? So that's really important to keep in mind. Independence and decision making is another big developmental milestone for them. So this kind of you can see this in like they want to make their own decisions. A lot of times teenagers get stereotyped of like, don't tell me what to do, but really it's a developmental stage. They're literally saying like, I want to make a decision for myself. I feel ready for this. I feel like I'm developing towards this, right? Um, and then they are wanting again, just kind of trying to pave their own path and have independence because independence is going to be really vital for adulthood. So that's really important. Um, some risks to consider with teenagers is we typically do see an uptick in depression, an uptick in anxiety, eating disorders, substance use, suicidal ideation, those sort of things. Again, because we have such a huge mix of things going on physically and cognitively, mentally, that it can be really difficult for teenagers to kind of weather their emotions and understand their moods and have sort of like these chemical things going on in their bodies that can create um, more heightened symptoms for them. Okay. Um, but the good news is there are also protective factors, and this is what's really important when working with teenagers and with families with teenagers is one of the biggest protective factors is a strong relationship between the caregiver and the teenager. Okay. So what this means is if a family comes into therapy with me, or I'm sitting down with a teenager, and sometimes I'll sit down with the parent as well. Sometimes we'll do like half a session with the teenager and then half a session with the parent. But when I'm talking and coaching parents, um, I often say like so often we focus on the problems, right? So often we're like, oh, this person is um just making a lot of bad decisions, or they are disrespectful, or whatever it is, right? And that's fine. We can work on those things. But more importantly, we need to figure out how are you connecting outside of these issues? Okay. What are you doing to create that relationship? Because that relationship is ultimately going to be very helpful when there is maybe some course correction or behavior correction, right? Um, so think of it, you know, a parent kind of stops having influence if the child doesn't feel supported or they don't even feel like this person really knows them. Then you're just one more authority telling them what to do. And that's really hard when it comes to this developmental stage of like, I want to make my own decisions, right? Um, and so, this might look like if a parent is really upset with a child or a teenager for having too much screen time or playing too many video games, right? And not getting their homework done or not getting their chores done. An approach to use is um, I'll sometimes ask the parent like, well, when was the last time that you sat down and played a video game with your teenager, right? Or even just talk to them about what they're playing, what they're interested in, why they like it, um, who, what's their top score. Like it doesn't matter, but it's just you're just connecting with them in a way and you're joining with them in sort of this interest that they have, right? And when we do that, when we kind of show our effort, right? Imagine like a father or a mother sitting down playing a video game that they've never played before, right? Maybe they're not good at it. They're trying to like race and they keep running into the walls or whatever. That's okay. It's okay if you don't have the same interest or you're not good at the same thing that your child or your teenager is good at. The effort that you're putting into it to connect with them is what is important. Okay. Laugh about it. Have a good time. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be boundaries, right? That doesn't mean that we can't work on those boundaries and saying, okay, I've worked on connecting with my teenager, okay, and having a genuine sort of experience with them. And this might take some time to build that. But now I can also set those parameters for them, right? And saying, hey, I care deeply about your work. I care deeply about you doing well in school because I want you to have um, a really successful future, those sort of things. Okay. So what I expect from you is this, like, 1 hour a day of screen time or whatever it is, right? And then setting sort of these consequences that might happen because of that, right? And so um, that's that's an approach that I would take. It's not the only approach, but it does often work. Okay. Other protective factors, school connectedness. So them having teachers, counselors, people in their corner who are not their parents, who are also cheering for them. So as therapists, we can work with parents in helping create those relationships. We can work with the students and saying, "Hey, how are you connecting with your teachers?" Right? When was the last time you said thank you to a teacher who tried, who tried extra hard or whatever? Um, we can also reach out to the schools themselves and create that connection with the teenager and helping them be aware of that relationship and how influential that can be. Um, Peer support is really important, right? The friends are extremely important. So helping the teenager recognize who those support systems are for them and what that relationship looks like. Is it a good relationship? Is it are they hanging out with people that they feel like they can be themselves, they can be whole with? Or do they feel like they're trying too hard in a crowd that doesn't really care much about them, right? Um, and then emotional regulation skills is also another protective factor, right? So as therapists, we have a huge role in this, just being able to teach them distress tolerance, you know, catching those cognitive distortions, right? Like, oh, life is never good, or I always fail, or whatever those things are. We can help them catch them and then create a more balanced thought. Okay. Um, and lastly, when it comes to the therapy, to protective factors, as a therapist, one of my jobs is to build a rapport with the teenager. Okay. And this takes some time, it takes some effort. Um, a piece of advice I would give is sometimes therapists want to jump in really quickly and give them all the skills and teach them all the things, and that's good. We want to teach those skills. Um, but there needs to be an amount of support and trust that happens with the teenager before we do a ton of work, right? So for me, this looks like even in the first session that I have with them, I will often just be pretty honest with them and I'll ask them like, "Hey, was this your idea to come to therapy or was it someone else's?" A lot of the times it wasn't their idea, right? It was mom or dad um, who said like, "You need to get help." Sometimes it can be kind of a co-decision, and a lot of times it is, but sometimes it's like they don't really want to be there because they feel like, again, you're just one more authority figure trying to tell them what to do or how to live their life, those sort of things. And so just asking that question kind of opens it up to them of being like, "Oh, I get to say that I don't want to be here or that this wasn't my idea. I get to express that truth and I'm not in trouble for it." Um, and so a lot of times I'll lean into it with them, just like, "Yeah, what's that like for mom to tell you that you need to see a therapist? What's that experience been like? How have you interpreted that? What does that mean to you, or what do you believe about yourself because of it?" Right? And letting them express how they want to, right? As a therapist, we're not there to convince them of anything. We're there to help explore their ideas, their emotions, and then help guide and teach skills to get them through this kind of torrential time in their life. Okay. Um, and then also you might consider uh, building that relationship through fun activities. Like a lot of times I'll play Uno with a child or a teenager, and we might spend 20, 30 minutes just kind of connecting. "Hey, what kind of music are you into? Oh my gosh, that's so rad. I love that song too." Or, um, what kind of sports do you like? What movies, shows, like anything to just kind of connect and celebrate the person is going to do wonders when it comes to, okay, now we want to start to look at what's happening, what's really going on, why are we having some of these behaviors? What's behind that, right? When they feel that trust and that connection, they're so much more willing to open up and talk about those things, right? Um, and so, okay. So now that I've talked kind of about that experience, let's review your homework for the week. I want to share my screen with you. There we go. Okay. So you're again, module 7, adolescence, such a great topic. You're going to be reading chapter 7 of your textbooks today. You do have some additional readings here and a lecture. And then, as always, there's some awesome YouTube videos for you to watch and just get an even deeper understanding into the adolescent world. Okay. Something to keep in mind is keep in mind like the different environmental factors that are going to influence teenagers. Okay. So what is it like? Think of like race, culture, gender, and how those things intersect and how that would affect a teen. Especially teens tend to have, when it comes to like immigration, they are in a really interesting space where they may have grown up in another country, another language, another culture, and then they're moved to this new culture. Um, and sometimes that can create this kind of middle ground for them that can be hard to navigate, right? Where it's like, mom and dad and grandma are, you know, are sort of like leaning into this old culture that they have. Or I won't say old, but like the previous culture. But I want to fit in and have friends and be a part of this culture. But the more I try to do that, I'm not really accepted as much by my family or the previous culture. And the more I lean back into that, the less I connect with this new culture, right? So it can cause a lot of anxiety, and just need extra patience and care and support. Okay, so just be aware of things like that as you're reading through your chapters, as you're watching the videos, things like that. Okay. Your assignments are, so there's this training, is the cell training. Basically, this is a really great training to help teenagers because it goes over all the developmental things that they're going through and building those skills. So think of like self-awareness, awareness of your emotions, right? Being able to manage like impulse control, um, and stress management, things like that. Social awareness, taking perspective, being open to or respectful of diversity, and then relationship skills like conflict resolution. Think of how impactful those skills would be as they are working with their parents or other siblings or, people, teachers and peers, those sort of things. And then decision making, like helping them develop skills and understanding around evaluating their consequences to make better decisions. Okay. So absolutely awesome training. And then you're going to have a module 7 quiz. And then finally, you have this discussion board. And this discussion board is extra credit. So, it's a great discussion board, but this will help you get a few extra points if you missed something before or you just want to have that padding. So I recommend that if you have the time this week, please do it. As always, I'm here for you guys. Thank you for reaching out. I've had several of you reach out to me, message me through Canvas. Um, and I've even met with some of you on Zoom. So if you have any questions or concerns, if you're going through a rough time, or you just want to talk to someone who's um, to get more information about social work and next steps for career or anything like that, I am more than happy to work with you and talk to you. Okay. Have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves and enjoy the sun.